I'd like to call this meeting of the Maple Run Unified School District Board of Directors to order at 6:01 p.m. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, 2020, and we are meeting electronically. We have 9 board members present, representing 8.5 votes. The first item on the agenda is the agenda review. I don't have any changes to make, so could I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Nilda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 8.5-0. Okay, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
To America.
and to the
To the
republic
republic for which it stands.
one
One nation.
under
Under
God,
God.
indivisible,
Indivisible.
liberty,
With liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. I'm jealous of those of you who are sitting outside tonight. It looks pretty darn good. And now it's time for our visitors section. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board? Did we get anybody, Jason?
There's no one in the chat at this time,
Okay,
Jeff, who's,
let's just take a quick look and see if we can see any hands or anything. Nope. Okay. Let's move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items in the consent agenda. We have the minutes of July 15th. We have the media packet. There's a few staff changes, I think 4. And then we have our financial statement. Does anybody want to remove any of these items for further discussion from the consent agenda? If I don't hear any objections, the consent agenda will be adopted. Okay, hearing none, the consent agenda is adopted. All right, here we go. Number 6A, COVID-19 update. I'll start with you, Kevin.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you.
Evening.
I am trying to organize my thoughts in the agenda through the 5 committees that we have. So, and which hits most of the stuff that I think is important to talk about around safety and health, leadership and funding, maintenance of operations, continuity of learning, and social and emotional health. I'm going to do my best to hit some of the frequently asked questions that we're getting, and I've heard from some of you that you wanted to get some better information on. And then I would say at that point, I'm most probably not going to hit everything, and there'll still be questions out there. So feel free to ask questions, and at that point, I'm going to open it up to the team also, so we can do the best we can to answer everything. You probably assume, and you'd be rightfully assuming, that the last month has been intense. And we've been trying to do an awful lot of information as we get the guidance from our Secretary of Education and from the governor and from our health department, and meld all that information and work together as teams to put a plan in place. So you may remember from last time that we had already scheduled and set up teams made up of the 5 things that are on your agenda. And that's was made up of staff members, faculty, administrators, nurses, health professionals, all working together to come up with a plan. We promised the plan 2 weeks after the board meeting, and we were able to deliver it in 10 days. And kudos to those people who did that we tried to get everything out. So we were able to put a plan in place, and also guidelines around health guidelines and whatever for everyone to see. And then it was into the implementation stages. and what that would look like. And we're still in that point right now. While we have the plan, there may be things that you're going to ask that we still don't have answers to, and we're still working on, though we have a pretty solid plan in place, given the amount of time we've got. So once again, I'm going to go through these 5 areas. Feel free to write down your questions and what they are, and then we can talk them through. But I'll hit what I hope is the major points. Under safe and health environments, at this point, there's really no change in our reopening plan. It was a pretty solid document, and we're looking at continuing. There have been some changes in the state health guidance. Some of it was clarification. Some of that was, I think, slightly trying to liberalize what they had initially come out with, or what the CDC had come out with. For instance, they've now stated that for the state of Vermont, we should consider the possibility of bringing people in more than just a half and half as we're doing now, especially younger kids, K-5. And their justification for that is that Vermont has done very well up to this point, and we need to get kids back in. So they've gone from that 6-foot rule that we originally had and kind of stated 3 to 6 feet for K-5 or pre-K-5. So we're taking that into consideration, but it's not changing our guidance right at this point. We will be looking at it though for the future. A couple other things they have in those new guidelines was that they're now stating it's not as crucial to take temperature, and also somewhat difficult logistically to take temperatures before kids get on a bus. And they're saying that as long as the temperatures are taken before kids get into school, things should be okay. Again, we're all taking this with a grain of salt, and we're going with some of it, but we haven't made changes in what we initially were going to do yet on these points. Those were the 2 major areas that they're looking at. So we can obviously see that they're trying to liberalize things somewhat, and we'll move forward in the future looking at that stuff. In the meantime, our guidelines are as they are relative to safety and what we're going to be in school, what we're expecting from kids relative to masks, relative to the 6-foot rule. The schools have done a great job in making their rooms lighter and more available, because we know we want to be able to distance them. So you'll take, we'll go to a school like City that I was in the other day, and Joan has pretty much taken out every bit of furniture or bookcases and everything else out of the rooms and placed them elsewhere so kids could have more room. And I don't know, I don't know precisely, but it looks like it's added at least like 25% more space in the rooms when she's done that. So we're still doing all those type of things that we need to do. Hopefully you've seen in our communications, we're trying to put out to people how important masks are and how important distancing is, and that the combination of distancing and masks is what the health department is saying is most ideal.
So Kevin, just for clarity, do you think that you're going to change the process on the bus, so that you're not going to do temperatures and wait till school? Or
we haven't made that decision totally yet, Jeff. One of our problems is we're not able to obtain bus monitors for each bus. We've put out job ads, we've tried to do things, and I think we have 1 or 2 people who are interested. We're still looking. We're still considering different ways of doing it, perhaps putting staff on the bus for that additional hour in the morning. You don't need it in the afternoon, it's the morning where the issues are. And we're working through that now, and we don't have a perfect answer. We know whatever we do, we're going to be following guidelines. And at this point, we're actually looking, if we follow our own guidelines, we're actually doing a little bit more than what the state's done.
And my guess is that that's going to be a problem for everybody. I don't know if you're hearing that same thing from the other superintendents.
From Champlain Valley superintendents, who are the people I'm working with most, nobody can find monitors. Some people have decided that it's just not possible, and they have to make sure they do a good job before the kids actually get into the school. Some people have decided to do something with parents and put some responsibility onto the parents to say, yes, my kid is fine, I've taken his temperature, and that would help the situation. But we haven't got that all down this week, and we're right in the process of doing that.
Okay, thank you.
If we go on to A2, under leadership, funding, I'm sorry. Yep, no, I'm right. We're, I'm sorry, I just need to get my notes right. Staffing wise, that is probably one of our highlights. As you've probably heard around the state, there have been some issues with staffing relative to people, high anxiety about coming in, vulnerable adults. We work pretty well with that. Right now we did a survey, what, Bill, maybe 3 weeks ago, that said most people could come in. And since then, we've been working with individuals. And we basically got one person who's looking to do a leave of absence, who doesn't feel she can come in. One person retired a year earlier than that person would have normally. And then we have about 18 or so who at least had initial issues. And those issues could be as small as, I have anxiety, but I'm coming in, but I want you to know this, to people who are living at home with a cancer patient or a cancer patient themselves who severely have issues about coming in. And we're working with those people individually, and we're working through our association that has been great, phenomenal partners with us. And we're just making it work for each person. If somebody, I think of one person who really what they needed was plexiglass around their station that they're in their building. We're dealing with that and handling it. Some of the people who truly cannot come in, if they're skilled enough to do it and able to do it, we may be putting them on virtual, 100% the virtual for those kids who are staying at home, 100%. So these people can work from home. So we're putting, flexibility is huge right now, but I think because we're being flexible, our staff is being flexible, and it's working quite well. Today was our first day of teachers. I wasn't in every school, but in the schools I was in, people were pleased to get there. I can't say that there's no anxiety, because there is. And I think that anxiety is pretty much with all of us. But some people who actually talked to me said, you know, I had more anxiety worrying about the anxiety, but now that I'm in school, I'm happy I'm here. And I'm glad I'm doing this.
Kevin, with some of the teachers, are you making sure that they have the N95 masks
I'm sorry, Al, I didn't hear that.
I said, are you making available the N95 masks for those teachers with those issues?
They're not N95 masks, Al, because mainly the N95 masks are going out to health professionals. But we are making available masks. The state has given us a lot of masks. They've given us 10 masks for every staff member. And they've given this to us. They didn't make us pay for it. And then I learned in some guidance today from the AOE, we're getting another shipment. So we are making those things available and making sure people can have them.
Okay, and I'm concerned.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that either.
I said I'm concerned, and I would think that, I know it's health professionals, but I would also think that they'd be available for teachers with certain degrees of disabilities.
Okay, I hear you.
Joanna has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joanna. You're on mute.
Okay. Kevin, I don't know if you received this training, but at SNESU, we just had an opportunity to hear from health professionals in central Vermont. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you not
Joanna,
hear
I'm
me?
sorry, I was having problems with my computer and I didn't hear a thing you said. I now have it.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that. So we had an opportunity to hear a training, a presentation from some health professionals, specifically geared towards school professionals from Central Vermont. So it was a pediatrician and it was a hospital physician, and it was so good. I'd be happy to if you don't know about it, I'd be happy to put you in touch with those folks. But all the teachers found it so valuable and very reassuring and comforting. And it talked about children from pre-K, all the way up to seniors in high school, but then also for adults, people that might have immune compromised issues or people at home that they're concerned about. And the information was extremely helpful and, again, just very calming and reassuring. And I just thought it was fantastic.
Well, thank you. We've had a lot of the professionals working with us. I don't know about the specific one, but please send it to us.
Yeah, it was 4 teachers, all for school personnel, and it was really great. And the teachers that I've spoken to since then, everybody found it very valuable and very comforting.
Great.
Kevin, you sent that to us today.
I will send it to you. I will.
No,
I haven't yet.
Kevin sent it to us today.
I didn't know if this was the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
We got it today.
Awesome. It was wonderful.
Yeah, if it's the thing I sent to the principals today, I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, it really was. And Al, it really talks to the issues that you're bringing up, and it talks about masks, specifically about what types of masks are relevant for school personnel versus the school nurse or people that are dealing with children that might be sick or families that might be sick. And so it was definitely very helpful, very informative.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move on. I don't see anything right now. In the same area, budget. Some questions have come out about how we're doing budget-wise, given all the unknowns. I don't have a best answer for you. And and Martha's shaking her head thinking probably the same thing. All we know is right now we can't, safety is the initial priority. And we are hoping and praying the state will stick to their commitments around reimbursements using the CARE Act and the ESSER Act. And we are spending a lot of time, and Martha's nagging, as she does so well, around coding everything that should be coded around COVID, to have the principals doing that. And we're keeping those tabs, and we're crossing our fingers they're going to be, we're going to get reimbursed. But ultimately, we may have to just make some decisions, as we're making all the time, around priorities, and our priority is safety. So, for instance, we've got thermal monitors that we put in every school. So when kids come in, they have their temperature taken immediately, and it's fast. It's like what's going through the airports. It's cost us significant dollars, but we had to do it. And staffing issues. Basically, we don't have to do a lot, but if we were to get bus monitors, even though nobody's interested, those would be additional. But we're doing that, and Martha's doing a great job keeping tabs of everything. And we're feeling comfortable right now. But at some point, we're going to show you those numbers, and yes, there are costs related to everything we're doing right now. Martha, do you have anything you might want to add to that, or?
No, I think that's good for now. Like you said, we really don't have a total yet of what these costs are. But I am getting information through the Agency of Education. The VASBO committee is getting information on a weekly basis, or pretty much weekly basis, on the funding of these costs. We're pretty sure we're going to get reimbursed for the bulk of what we've had to shell out for these safety measures.
And as the board knows, we tried to be proactive last year, knowing that it might be extra costs. So there were some people we didn't hire last year to help with this, such as the curriculum director, such as some of the behavior interventionists, some paras. And we tried to do the best we can to keep costs down, knowing other costs are going to be up. So we're feeling okay at the moment. I just wrote down here, not to belabor this, some of the things that I thought of right offhand that's costing us is furniture, PPE, the stuff that hasn't been donated by the state. But some, as I said, some additional staffing, mainly for buses, maybe. Childcare, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. Plexiglass, and they ain't cheap, and they ain't easy to find. But our custodians have been great taking care of that. Disinfectants, all of that. So it is costing. So that's A2.
Anybody have any questions for Kevin at this point on what he just covered? Any board members? Nope. Oh, Joanna has a question.
Are you gonna talk about, I'm interested in learning more about the virtual versus in-school training or education. And I was wondering whether or not Maple Run became members of the VTLP, because I thought I had heard that they hadn't. And I was just wondering what the thought was about that.
And If you don't mind, Joanna, I'd like to follow a structure, and that's on A4.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
I definitely will get to that.
okay, no
just
problem.
Just to keep me organized.
Yes, yes, that's fine, sorry.
And let's, Grant has a question.
Grant?
With you. Yeah, you mentioned that you've been in the city school earlier, maybe yesterday. Would there be an opportunity for school board members to have a tour and see what's going on? When it becomes maybe feasible to do so, when it's sort of everything else on your priority list is taken care of, I'm wondering if you might be able to post a virtual tour for parents so they can see exactly what's going on in the classrooms also.
Well,
Sure,
interestingly,
we can get Joan to say something, but City School has been posting some videos about.
that's what I was going to say.
Okay.
That video I sent you yesterday, Grant, has some of that.
Yeah.
in it. I would say we would try to do something, but why I'm being a little bit coy is because part of the guidelines is that we're not supposed to be bringing people, strangers, you're not a stranger, but outside people into the building that might in any way contaminate anything. So the virtual part, I think, is a good idea, and we do have some videos out on that. And perhaps there is a way of doing what you're saying and letting board members see. I just would like to work on that.
Okay. Just something that, you know, maybe the parents could watch with their kids, say this is what to expect when you get in. And maybe that's what's already gone out for city. I didn't have a chance to see the whole video. It could be a way to prep them for what to expect.
But basically what you see in your buildings are empty classrooms. To a degree, obviously they're sitting, they have desks, but bookcases, anything that's extraneous. In Joan's case, and I should probably let Joan speak. Go ahead.
Just for a second. I mean, it's bare, and it was really funny because we did summer school with the thought that we would learn, and we learned so much by just 3 weeks. When there were two teachers, at the end we interviewed the teachers and we did some videotapes of the teachers talking about the experience. I think you might have seen the videotape of the children talking about the experience. And two of the teachers said, when I first saw the room, I thought, oh my God, how am I going to teach in here? And after just a couple of days, one teacher said it was freeing not to have sound. And the other teacher said she was so invested in kids, she forgot the fact that there was no stuff. So I think when we think about classrooms as being like this barrage of stuff all around us, we think it's going to be so hard to do without it. But what the teachers found over the 3 weeks of summer school was, when you start engaging with kids and you're working and you're active, it's not that big of a deal. The stuff you thought you needed was really not all that critical. And that came from them, not from me. I always think that that much stuff is never necessary. But for some of them, that's critical. And so for them, it was like, oh my gosh. And then they're like, it didn't even bother me. After like a couple of days, I was fine. So I think I'm going to be sharing those videos with my teachers tomorrow, just because some of them I think are still sort of stuck in the, oh, what is this going to be like? And it's not bad at all.
Okay, Grant?
Thanks, Joan.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So I'll move on to A3. Maintenance of operations. And of course that hits a whole bunch of stuff around facility, busing and whatever. Busing, presently no busing changes at this time. We have things pretty much all set. What I predict, given the surveys that we've been getting back, is those buses will be fairly light in numbers. There's an awful lot of people that are saying, especially in the city and BFA, that they plan to have their students walking or biking when they can. But also there's an awful lot of people in all of our school districts, all of our towns, they're thinking that they might just be bringing their kids to school and not wanting them to have to do the bus. But the buses will be available and going the regular routes, and we're feeling pretty good about that. And we're working very closely with our bus company. This is out of Swanton, and they've been very helpful on this. And they know a lot of the regulations and the guidelines that they have to do to ensure cleanliness of the bus, and are working on that aspect. Meals. We talked a lot about meals last time, and up to this point and going into the future, that's still one of our sense of pride of how we've been able to do this. But I'll leave this to Joan too, since she's kind of our meals guru throughout all of this. And if you have things you want to add.
No, we end universal meals on August 31st. At that point in time, we switch now back to traditional school meals.
So will those be available when the students are in school?
For anybody who's enrolled in City, we're still a community feed site, and whether you're virtual or not, you're eligible for meals. In the other schools that are not community feed sites, I believe free and reduced lunch children are eligible for meals, even if they're not on site.
And so will those be done via pickup? Sean's saying yes. So, okay.
Cleaning the school. Our custodial staff have been working overtime. They've done a phenomenal job with this. The schools are ready. They're always ready this time of year, but they're super duper ready this year. And they understand the new rules around disinfecting. They have protocols. Each principal has protocols in place for disinfecting. Much of the work will be done overnight, though there will be a time during the day that there'll be a cleaning. But overnight will be the big cleaning before the next day. And also Wednesday, that off day, will be a day with this good cleaning going on. We're keeping our playgrounds closed, our playgrounds on site closed while in school, because we're not able to keep them constantly up and cleaning these big playgrounds. Having said that, we do not have total control of what happens when school's not in session, and we have signs out in all the schools that are at your own risk. And we do have Perel out there and soap for them and things like that, but we aren't able to just clean a huge playground at that time, so we are having to close it down. The exception to that really Collins Pearly, that brand new playground. Tim, you're up and running, right? And it's at your own risk, but it's been used quite a bit, right?
Yes, and it's used all the time. Do you want me to close that during the school day? Do you see any need for that?
Let's talk about it, because you're more than just a school facility, so we'll have to talk about that. So.
Okay.
That's basically it in operations.
Since you just talked about the playgrounds and stuff, will the students be having some kind of recess? Sean says yes.
They are, but maybe I'd like to have a principal talk about that. Sean, do you want to take that one?
Sure. We're going to give them lots of opportunities to get outside as often as we possibly can. So there will be recess times when they'll be able to play on fields. We're trying to come up with little roller carts of certain games that teachers can play with the kids that can be easily sanitized after use and then used by another group afterwards. It's just a matter of not using the playground, but using more organized games where the teacher can be in control of sort of the social distancing and allowing kids to get their masks off while they're outside. And we're thinking there are going to be a pretty good number of breaks to go outside and get fresh air and walk around during the course of the day. At least that's what we're planning, and I think that's the conversation we've all had.
Good. Yeah, I think there's a lot of concern about that. I've heard from people.
Absolutely.
They don't want to think of their kids.
And I've also heard of some teachers are actually going to take their kids outside for class as they can until January hits.
Yeah, we're hearing about that too. People are, I know Joan, you could probably talk about this, but she's got all these areas where they can go out and have class.
So city, probably 40 areas that are marked off and labeled that you can sign up to run a class. Each area can handle what we're calling a pod. That's the teacher with their 10 kids. And then we've got some areas that are big enough to hold a learning community, which will consist of 3 pods. And we also purchased crates. So one of the things Kevin was talking about, getting the square footage back in a room. And almost every one of our younger grades rooms had little cubbies, but the cubbies took up a quarter of the room to hang your coat and stuff like that. So we don't want kids going to one place to hang up their stuff and congregate. So we got, the cubbies are now lining the gym, and in place of it, we've got milk crates that are strong enough to hold our kids. So they're gonna have the milk crate to hold their stuff in the classroom, and they can dump it on top of their station and take the milk crate outside, and it becomes their seat. So just sort of thinking about how do we think differently and simply, so that we can transform a lot of things into being outdoors. And our hope, our expectation is that teachers will be teaching outdoors as well as going outdoors for mask breaks and recess.
Thank you.
So I said we were down to this one, but hearing about the outside, I should add, and this kind of may go under A4 also, but we've also tried to do a few things with internet as much as possible, because so kids can make sure they have internet outside so they can do some work. And I know Collins Pearly has actually added bandwidth. And if you go on the side by the tennis courts, the last time I was up there, I saw at least one tent out there, right, Tim?
Correct. And we have another one on order. Martha's buying it for us.
So kids can actually, if they need a space, not during the day, but if they need a space, if they want to come and they want to be able to work, there'll be outside space there and enough bandwidth so they can use the internet for those purposes.
Any board members have questions for Kevin about what he just talked about with A3? All right, go ahead, Kevin.
This is the one Joanna had talked about under continuity of learning. And I'm going to start the conversation, but I'm also going to put it off to the principals and especially to Bill, who's been working really hard on this one. And one of his roles now is as curriculum guru and other things. He's been helping. First, I'll tell you what I think everyone knows. We have 2 systems going on at the same time. We have a hybrid system where students are in Monday and Tuesday, or they're in Thursday and Friday with Wednesday off. Well, off as far as nobody in the school. And we have a second system for those people who mostly have vulnerable adults, or the kids have health issues, or just such high anxiety that they're very uncomfortable. We do have the option of doing 100% virtual. We did some surveys, which I told you about, and I've been putting stuff out to you guys. The initial surveys looked like there was about 30% who wanted full remote, about a third that wanted the hybrid, and about a third that really didn't know. Since we have the plan in place now, and since we've been implementing, and since we've been talking to our parents, communicating all these plans, the numbers have switched, have changed quite a bit. They may switch a little bit more, although everybody was supposed to have their information into our principals by August 11th. So I think we're fairly set. We're looking at about 7, 8, 9%, depending on the school, about 7% district-wide that are going to go fully remote. And then district-wide, around 93% that have chosen to do the hybrid. So they are in our district, and in the way we're doing it, they are two completely different systems. You almost might call them different schools. So we'll have different faculty teaching the full 100% virtual versus the ones who are teaching in school for the hybrid. Bill, do you want to push on this one a little bit and give some more detail?
Sure, I'd be glad to, Kevin. Thank you. Just to give you a few more numbers, we have across kindergarten through 12th grade, we have about 210 students that are signed up for the virtual academy. And we only had 3 or 4 teachers, classroom teachers, that needed to teach remotely. So that's out of a staff, that's out of a teaching staff of over 250 teachers. So it made it difficult to start to look at how are we going to provide remote instruction with our own staff. And we've been able to design a virtual academy that's pre-K-12. When we went out with our initial information, we thought the numbers would be different, as Kevin highlighted, and they came back different than what we expected. So that changed some of our thinking, especially at the high school. But at the K through 8th grade, we've been able to use our own staff, and we just are solidifying tonight the actual staff who will teach online and teach fully online. And some of those are folks who must be remote, and some of those are ones we had to change their job. We're having to tell them and reassign them because we didn't have enough folks that must be remote because of their doctor. It's really well defined. Been through a lot of training on this from an HR perspective and how you define whether someone must be remote. And we've been really, and I have to thank Mike Campbell's here tonight, but the leadership of our association has been tremendous to work with and to really help work through issues individually and collectively for the staff. At the high school, we didn't have any teacher, any certified staff member that needed to teach remote. And we had a little over 55 kids that were looking for a fully virtual experience. We were planning to do something that was going to be our own classes. Joanna, you asked about why we didn't go with VTVLC, which we did not. There are approximately 78 high schools in the state of Vermont. 35 of them are going with VTVLC. The rest are doing something different, and there's some in Chittenden County that are signed with different partners. We have a long-standing relationship with Virtual High School and Plato Online Learning, and that's where we're going. We're going to use them as our online provider, along with other opportunities. But as you heard last spring, and Brett can tell you more, he'll tell you more about the high school schedule for the hybrid. We know that kids in this environment that we're in right now, when there's a lot of online, they shouldn't be taking more than 4 classes at a time. And all the online institutions we've worked with and the conversations we've had with higher ed institutions as well, is really, that's kind of the top limit for kids. So we've had to kind of build our system off of that. That doesn't mean we won't do more for individuals in the virtual academy, but we really want success to start early. So we're starting slow. I would leave the rest of the hybrid, Kevin, to the principals. I know I could fill in on it, but that's really what they've been focusing on, and I can take any other virtual questions, or if Kevin, if you think I missed something that's a detail, I'd be glad to give it.
Thank you, Bill. I would say one thing, and this was wonderful to find as we worked as a team on this. obviously, when we were starting to implement, we were wondering how were we going to staff the fully remote? And because if you look at an individual school and have an individual school try to do that, you're going to start using a lot of staff throughout your whole district, and a lot of that staff's needed for the hybrid. But when we looked at the numbers and we talked to our principals, we noticed that if we all worked together, we would get a lot more accomplished. So for instance, and I'm going to get some of this wrong, so the principals help. Each principal has kind of helped by saying, I will supply a teacher for anybody throughout the district who's in, was it K1 and 2, Joan? That's what City was doing. So she supplied a teacher, and because we're merged, we can do that. So whether you're from Fairfield or town or city, if you're K1 and 2, we have a teacher, and that happens to be a city teacher who's doing that. Then, Angela, you're supplying what? You're helping with what?
We will have one teacher in the third, fourth, and fifth literacy position, and then we will also be staffing both the literacy and math for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students.
And all foreign language,
yes,
right?
French. We will be also offering the French piece.
Good. Yeah.
All remote.
Scott's been great with that. So.
Yes.
And then Fairfield, are you supplying? What are you supplying, or are you?
Yes, my 3, 4, 5 math teacher is actually the first one who jumped on board. She can't wait. She thinks this is amazing. And the Spanish teacher that we share with BFA is also going to be taking on a number of these school teachers and doing a remote version of Spanish. So that's pretty exciting.
So as we worked as a team, we were able to do that and fill every one of those things.
And Kevin, I don't think I got a chance to say this. Joan, as she's doing the 2 teachers for K2, and we, as you said, segmented it off. Sean's going to be overseeing the 3, 5. City School is going to supply the unified arts teachers for PE, art, and music for all K8. So we were able to fit into their schedule. I don't think I got a chance to update you on
Good
that.
point.
That happened yesterday.
Good point. Thank you. So we couldn't have done that if everyone hadn't worked together. I appreciate that. Now, one big frequently asked question the parents have asked is, if I make a decision and in a week or so, I'd like to change that decision, may I do that? And once again, we're trying to stay flexible. We're not in a normal situation, and we want to help the parents on this. So the answer is yes. If they're doing full remote and they really feel a little bit more comfortable, they see we've been successful, and they'd like to bring them to a hybrid, we're allowing them to do that. The only thing we're saying to people is, truly, it's like going to a different school. So it's not, educationally, it's not a perfect thing if you're continually transferring back and forth. But we understand why there's a need for that in some cases. And unless it gets taken advantage of, we're gonna allow them to do that.
I just wanted to,
Principals.
sorry, Kevin, I wanted to check in with Nina because her hand was up and I didn't know if she still had a question.
Yeah, I do. Hi. Just wondering, you're talking about the hybrid and the virtual learning. What's the difference in schedule? I've seen the schedule for the hybrid learning. What is the virtual learning? Is that just more of a full class, length that will be happening online with the teachers that have signed up? I guess, how does that differ from hybrid schedule?
Bill, you want to take that, or you want to tell the principal?
No, I can take that. So Nina, right now the actual schedule's being designed. and you heard the kind of the 3 pods we have. We have a K2, a 3-5, and a
Yep.
6-8.
Mm-hmm.
We have a suggested schedule that we have in a draft document that we're putting together, but I really want those teams of teachers, the only thing that's constraining them, as it does any time with a K-8 school, is when the unified arts is happening. And we have to work with SACS because those same teachers are providing unified arts to the students at SACS. But the rest of it is they're going to put together their schedule. It's going to be a combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning. And the fully remote may not have everything that's happening in the hybrid learning. We're going to do the best we can. It's not a situation we want to be in. But we also know, just like I talked about for high school students, for younger students, you can't keep the amount of learning going. And the big part for all of this is what we're calling the learning coach, which is an adult that can help kids learn while they're fully remote. And that's really key. And that's what we put out in our guidelines we sent out earlier. And we'll be doing more of that work with the families. And the reason I call it a coach is because it doesn't necessarily have to be your parent every day, but it needs to be someone that can support the kid throughout the day because they are learning remotely. And as you can imagine, as the kids get younger, there's more intense time for someone to provide that support on site.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a challenge for anybody. No, I appreciate it.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. It's not going to be easy. And what I learned specifically at the high school is the kids that didn't have that support as a high school, and it's like 1 to 2 hours a day. Those are the ones that floundered.
Yeah. And I have one more question. Sorry, Jeff, if it's okay. Kevin, it's going back to a comment you made at the beginning. I couldn't get myself off mute. Sorry, my internet was kind of funky. You'd mentioned that there's talk about kids possibly, I don't know, is it K through 5 or K through 6 we're going back to school. I know there's talk possibly back full time. Was there some sort of talk about timelines as to possibly that could happen, or is it still kind of a wait and see day by day?
The Champlain Valley Superintendents Association, which are the people I'm working with, the 16 superintendents, and who've been working together pretty closely from the beginning, are now looking at that, Nina, and we're looking at the possibility. We can't give an exact date. There's so many unknowns.
Understood.
So
yeah.
We're looking, but if you're talking, is it months? Is it years? Is it semesters? We're looking at the possibility between 4 to 6 weeks. Reviewing this with the idea, if the world stays the same for Vermont, if COVID is still low or nothing, if we're able to practice over 4 to 6 weeks and we get a protocol down that's going really, really well and smoothly for hybrid, if all of these type of things in place, I know Joanna Droz, that Jay did that, but we're not following Jay. We're doing our own thing, and we don't agree with that.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going, Kevin. Like I guess the timeline you would review this to kind of say, okay, we could move forward with this, as opposed to, okay, we need to stay status quo, and then we'll revisit it again another month.
We're prepared to look at this, and I'm saying around 4 to 6 weeks, if the criteria is in place that we can start moving. Now, interestingly, if I have to be really honest, if we have to look at both directions. So we're in a position where we're hoping things are going to continue to get better and we can start bringing more kids in. But if things get worse and we start running and we become, St. Albans becomes the hot spot of Vermont, we may have to looking at going full remote. So we have to look at everything.
Now, also the consideration too is the comfort level of the staff and administration too, correct?
Yes, staffing is going to be a big issue.
Yeah,
we've got to keep our staff healthy too.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. I wasn't looking for an exact date, but I'm sure you were talking about it. But I've had a lot of questions like, okay, we've heard this when you like, there's no timeline. So thank you.
Grant?
Just switching focus for a minute, going from sort of the long-term, what's going on with a hybrid versus remote. Can we shift it back to the more short-term? Specifically, I'm wondering what your target is for communicating to parents the daily schedules for remote learning, and also the green-blue groupings for their kids, so that they can plan for which days they can be at work or have to have learning coaches at home for the remote days. I think that if it goes too much longer, you're gonna run into people just basically scheduling over and not waiting to hear, and you're gonna run into conflicts. I'm a little concerned about that.
Do I have a principal, Angela? Would you like to answer that?
I can speak to the hybrid scheduling, and I think Sean and Joan might be similar in terms of the pre-K 8s, but so we just had staff back today, and we're scheduling meetings with all the grade levels, and we have everything in a spreadsheet. And so what we're trying to do is our main goal is to support the families with what they're requesting, because we also know we have young children involved, and they either need their older siblings, or they need to be able to match their their parents' schedules. So we are going out of our way to try to make that work. Some of the classes so far, it's working out pretty well, especially because some of the parents that have said we're flexible. So that's been great. There's still a couple of the classes where we're making a few phone calls to kind of see, because obviously the whole idea is to not have everybody there at once. So we're working on that. And so we're hoping we finish the meetings at my school tomorrow, and then our hope is to get the letters out to families so that they know the communication is would be Friday or Monday, to get those letters out of this week. So that's and I want to say, if someone wrote in the survey, we really need Thursday, Friday, we probably won't switch it unless we call them and say, is there any possibility? If they still say no, we might just move them in the same learning community, but with the other homeroom, they're still going to get the same stuff. In the K2, depends. We might have to adjust classrooms a little bit to meet the needs of the parents, but we're working on it. So it definitely is pretty complicated. BFA was great. They shared their spreadsheet with us, so we know when all the high school groups are. We know they're using the alphabet, but there's some waivers with that. So I think it's a process, and I think we're going to have things figured out by hopefully Friday to get those letters out. And I think probably Sean and Joan are in a similar boat. And I think Bill mentioned it before. We are working on the virtual schedule, and we'll have each component of that figured out and shared, I would say, in the next probably 3 or 4 days for the virtual piece. So hopefully that answers some of what you were looking for.
Thank you, Ann.
Yeah, could you know the virtual piece again? Sorry, maybe I missed it. Because I do think that whatever is the 10% or so students that are going to need that, whoever that learning coach is, whether it's a parent or a tutor, they probably need to start setting hours for when they need to be available for the kids.
That's two separate things, Grant. I think what Angela was talking about was on the days that kids who are in school on Monday, Tuesday, their 3 days of virtual learning or remote learning at home. I think that's what she was talking about. We're not necessarily talking about the fully 100% virtual. We have a document that we're working off of to start thinking about those schedules, but that's going to be different.
So could we get an ETA on when that communication is going to take place, and when the full virtual or the
So Grant, I didn't get the end of your question there. I'd be glad to, but the parents have been in K, they've been in discussions with the principals about what ensuring their choice. And we're putting together those rosters right now. I know we're planning on a letter going out tomorrow, Friday, from the high school to start setting up counselor meetings with the families to look at course selection, because we have to re-go through course selection for the high school kids. And we'll be contacting the K-8 parent families about setting up the different pieces we're going through for the virtual. We don't have all those schedules figured out, and that probably will not be finished until the end of next week for the K-8s, for the fully virtual. It's just, there's so much to do, and it's just the timetable we're at. But they will have contact before the end of next week.
Thanks, Bill.
John?
It's just, if it helps people, anybody who asks for virtual is going to get it. I mean, that's not like we're going to choose who gets it and who doesn't. We're not going to force somebody to come in that really wants virtual. So I believe that so for those people, they know they're going to have it, and we've just got some details to work out, which shouldn't really affect.
Yeah, and a lot of that is because the teachers are just starting this. We got to plan it together. So we couldn't plan it ahead of time.
I see Stephanie had her hand up.
Thanks. I just wanted to fill people in on what preschool is going to look like, if that schedule is of interest to everyone. Preschool has shifted this year to run at the same hours that the rest of the school where they're housed run. So that will ease some of the drop-off and busing issues that pre-K sometimes has, especially with half-day programs. That can be a real hard thing to do, to find daycare for half a day. So preschool's now going to run full days, 2 days a week, with one cohort and then another cohort running Thursday, Friday. We will have a remote option, but it won't be the 10 hours, because our pre-K kids are regulated by child care licensing, and there's a regulation that they can't have more than 30 minutes a day of screen time, but we're still going to have that remote option to have kids who are home connect with a teacher.
Thank you. Ready to move on, Kevin?
Sure. I just might close that part by just reminding everybody that we initially got all our numbers basically the 11th, which was last week. Now we have kids back in school, we're pushing for those schedules, but it takes a little time because it is hugely complicated when you've got 2,700 students you're scheduling and you're trying to work it through a high school schedule that has basically by the alphabet, and still we want to try to be very flexible. So everybody's working their hardest to get that done. A few other notes I put here: computers.
Kevin, Susan has had her hand up for a while, so I think she has a question. I'm sorry to.
I don't know about, it must be the same on all of you. I don't see everybody because it's 2 pages.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just happened to see her, so I wanted to make sure she.
Thank you.
So my question is, does this mean the high school students don't know what classes they're taking in the fall?
For the fully virtual, Susan, that's correct. We want to reprioritize. We can't give them the 7 courses at the hybrid students. The hybrid students do know their courses. They're in the same courses.
Okay, and so if they're doing remote, they're probably not taking AP classes?
That's not necessarily, that's not
Okay.
an assumption you can make.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay. And thank you for people, if you catch people with hands up, because as I say, I don't see everybody. Computers, every student who needs a computer. Oh, and Stephanie, there was a question I saw in the chat that for you might want to answer. Everybody who needs a computer will get a computer. If they have their own device, we'll probably be allowing them to use that, but everything is and we have the resources, so every person has a computer. It's a little different for each school on how that's being done. But computers aren't the issue. As we've always said, the issue which we don't have total control on is internet access. And while we're trying to do the best we can with people to what we have control over, we don't have control over that aspect. Brenda, could you put up that little visual that I sent you today? I thought you guys might have some interest. I received today a little bar graph or pie chart on what other school districts are doing around the state, because it's not the same for everybody. So I thought that might interest you. So obviously the big slice is what we're doing, the hybrid instruction with fully remote. But you do have a gamut. Every district is different and feels they could do things differently. So I think your next largest, the 12.5%, is schools in the district or the SU, which have each one is doing something different. And your next largest slice is a fully in-person instruction with a fully remote option. So you're either fully in or you're fully out. And then there's some variations. Certainly the question could be asked in the state the size of Vermont, can't we all get together and do the same thing? But not in a state where the AOE feels local control takes precedent.
Oh,
So,
Kevin, I would bet that that percentage is a percentage of schools or districts, not a percentage of students. So
I believe you're right. That's the way the survey happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I bet the percentage of students doing the hybrid instruction are a lot higher.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Brenda. You probably already understand this, but because of the governor's mandate, our teachers are now taking over some of the days that would have been student days. So we were originally coming in on the 19th for teachers, and we are doing that. We're in today. But now students were going to start on the 26th, and now the dates between the 26th and September 4th are now all teacher days, where we're able to do professional development. We're able to bring people in, to talk to them, to show them videos like what Joanna was talking about, to get them acclimated again, because they haven't been in school for 4 or 5 months, and to working together, to have time to work on their curricular, to do all of that. So unlike March, where we basically had to do something different in 2 days, we now have some time to prepare and to get it right, to get it even better than before. I think that's all in that area.
Any questions from the board about A4?
I have one more question. I'm sorry, Kevin. I've had a couple of families ask me about the implications of students who'll be taking their AP courses early, like first semester, but not taking their test until later. Has that been addressed, or is there a plan around study groups or supporting those students later on?
I would have to either ask Brett or Bill to answer that. Brett?
Sure, I'll be happy to answer it. We approached that subject a while ago. We brought it to department chairs today, and they brought it to departments to address. So in short, the answer is yes, we've been looking at it, and that includes some options. I don't want to go into too many details because I feel in some cases that I'm going to set teachers up. So we are having a meeting with the AP teachers we're scheduling. So without reviewing everything they worked on today, without taking a look with what they have to say, I'm not going to throw out plans, but there is work being done in that area. It should also be said, just, for kind of point of clarification, that a high percent of schools prior to COVID are actually on the semester, just like colleges. So while I understand the concern switching from 7 to 3 or to 4, it's not as radical as it may seem in terms of trying to adjust to make it ready. It is more difficult, don't get me wrong. So we do need to take into consideration, how do you prepare students in May when you're going to miss perhaps a month of instruction? And while I think there's ways to do it, I know there's ways to do it. Again, I want to be very careful without having talked to teachers first. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, we're looking.
Yeah, and that's great, Brett. I think that's what people are looking for, is just to make sure folks are aware, which is what I had assumed, but I wanted to clarify tonight. So thank you.
Okay, Kevin.
So moving on to A5.
Hold on, did Joanna have a question?
Yep. I also wanted to find out about intervention and like remediation efforts in terms of, I know some schools talked about hosting like an after school program during the day on Wednesdays to make it available for students who need extra help, intervention and remediation. So I was just wondering if how the schools have thought about addressing students that need callbacks or whatnot.
Yeah, I'll speak, maybe because my microphone's on. So we built that into the first part of the morning in the first semester. So we think it's so important to make sure that students that may have struggled in the last part of the last year, that we have built-in time where they're scheduled in order to work through that remediation. And then Wednesdays are lined up to work directly with some students virtual, but to make sure that we have connection with students throughout the week, especially with those that need extra time and extra assistance to get to classes that they didn't show proficiency last year.
Okay, thank you, Brett.
And Joanna, I might add, although you spoke as a general student, we've also working on certain protocols for special ed students who might need additional supports. And Andrea has been working on that too, so they might be coming in some additional time.
And what about the K through 8 schools?
We're gonna meet them where they are, Joanna. We're gonna find out where they are, and we're just gonna meet them there. That's very much what elementary does anyway. We're not planning anything on Wednesdays. Our teachers need that time. They're not going to have planning time on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So they're going to need extended periods of time to make this work and make it work right. So we're gonna, like I said.
Angela?
We're similar as far as right now, the way our hybrid schedule is, the only time for our teachers to plan is on Wednesdays. And I've built in the hybrid schedule. Every grade level has a dedicated block of time for the in-person instruction that is for intervention. So they'll have access to their, a lot of it will be done with their classroom teachers and a little bit with some of our interventionists, but we will be having 3 of our math or literacy interventionists will be now redeployed or mixing therein of other staff to help staff the virtual learning. It's a little bit of a shuffling. So we'll have 3 less literacy or math in terms of, in-person instruction. So but we are kind of, because of the smaller numbers with hybrid and building in the time and the in-person days, that's how we're supporting students, as well as what Sean said, doing assessments, seeing where they are. And I think really taking advantage of the hybrid and the smaller groups, and really trying to do a lot with the students when we do have them, and setting up some really doable and positive activities and learning that they can do on their remote days.
Thank you.
Okay, Kevin.
As far as SEL, I'm gonna leave this open. Alexis would talk normally about it. I do not believe Alexis is here because she's been at workshops. Am I right?
She is here, Kevin.
I'm here.
Sorry, Alexis, I wanted to start with you if you have any specific things you wanted to talk about, what we're doing relative to social emotional.
Sure, I can give a really quick update. So the social emotional committee at the district level wrapped up our work quite a while ago now, as did everybody else. I think it was the second to last week in July that we completed our kind of guidelines and recommendations for the district. And right now it's really just supporting each of the individual schools on putting their own kind of systems and support in place. The guidelines that we put forward were pretty general because we intentionally wanted to give schools their own level of autonomy on putting those things into place based on their school culture and what would work best for their students and their staff. I think there's two primary focuses of all of the work that we're doing. It's not only about how to support the students and the families once we reopen, but also how to support our staff. And I know that that's a really big concern, just as much as the well-being of our students is how do we prevent, compassion fatigue and secondary traumatic stress of our staff, because the anxiety and the fear is very high right now. So that's an update for the SEL committee.
And certainly we're putting a lot of priority to that right at the beginning and working on this, because while the academics are important, we need to make sure that that's happening, and that's foundational right now.
Yeah, and I would just add to that I think the schools are actually doing a tremendous job on doing this work prior to the first day of school. So there's a lot of work going into what do we do once we reopen our doors on September 8th. But I do think it's important for people to know there's a lot of amazing work happening on outreach and supporting staff and families right now. And not waiting until they walk through our doors on September 8th.
Thanks, Alexis. So I feel like I've talked forever, but that's our generalized and, well, as specific as possible. Certainly open it up to other questions, and we'll be glad to answer if we can. I would just summarize my part by saying people have been working really, really hard. We've got some good stuff out there. They're doing a lot of research. They're doing a lot of communication, and the team is working hard. And having said that, there's nobody in this room or your rooms that would say that this is normal. We're working on abnormal situations, trying to put as much normalcy in as possible. And I think they're doing pretty well. Grant?
Yeah, just one last comment before we move on from COVID. We have a pretty amazing community here of the, I want to say, 3 sort of core municipalities. That feed mainly into
Grant, we've lost your voice.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Can you hear us, Grant?
Yeah, could you not hear me?
Yeah, we couldn't hear you.
Oh, I was just saying that, with the community that we have, I would bet that there are people that are willing to volunteer if the schools are short-staffed or short-handed. And if that's the case, then who would, if that's a possibility, who would they contact to do so?
I would, well, I think that's a answer that's not one answer. Why I hesitate on that, Grant, is because one thing that we're very concerned about, because it's in the health guidelines and very specific, is what I mentioned earlier. We can't have volunteers in the buildings. And if it was outside the buildings and there was something that could be done and we needed some help, we'd love, wonderful. And I would say that volunteer would first talk with one of the principals if it was a certain school they wanted to work on, or call me if it's a district-wide thing. But what we're going to be very, very careful on is ensuring that the school is a sanctuary that is free from anybody other than who should be in that school.
No. Okay, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone. Item 6B, I'd look for a motion to adopt policy B08, electronic communications. Thank you, Al.
Second.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, if you guys remember, this is a required policy. We looked at it last time. We put it out for comments. And so I'd ask Brenda if she knows, did we receive any comments?
We did. Bill has those.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Brenda, I wasn't quite ready with that.
I could answer that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I know, go ahead, Kevin. I know that we had some teachers asking specifics about the time that was in the policy. We had to get back to them about that.
The major issue, and we knew this last time, because we had the same issues, was around the problem with between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. that there be no communication between teacher and student. And we talked to VSBA, and there's no give on that. They felt that it was the one challenging area that there were disagreements on when they were doing the policy, but they eventually felt very strongly that this is a criteria used around a grooming of kids, and no communication in the evening like that. So we're going to have to do things. That the concern is that as we are now in all our remotes, we have teachers actually working at 10 o'clock at night, correcting papers and getting back to kids. So the only thing we're going to have to start doing is use the technology correctly. So even though we may be corresponding with kids, then the kid won't get it until 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whenever that time is. Because the VSBA is stuck on that, and it is a mandatory policy. It can't be changed.
Or not even necessarily the VSBA so much as the AOE, right? Because weren't you told that they own the policy?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about this before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting policy B08, electronic communication, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it 9-0. Thank you. Item 6C, we have some information, updates on a legal matter that need to move into executive session with a finding that, you know it, Al, premature general public knowledge would clearly place the board or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. Could I get a motion to move that?
So,
Thank you, Al.
Second.
Thank you, Jack. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 9-0. That will be moved to executive session. And I don't think I said it, but that's under 1 VSA 313A1F. Okay, on to new business. Item 7A, approve changes to non-union guidelines. Is that you, Bill?
Yes, it is. The major piece of the update and the non-union guidelines are very similar to what we've had in past years. But as you all know, our healthcare has gone to a statewide option. So as we did in our ESP and teacher contracts, we had to update those. So it was a statewide negotiated healthcare. We had to do that with the guidelines as well. There are a couple other minor technical pieces that were adjusted in, but that's the major piece that Martha and I worked on.
Yeah, it looked like mostly healthcare stuff.
Yeah, it's like 95, 98% of it's healthcare. There are a couple small, some of them were typos, some were other things. So, yeah.
So could I get a motion to approve the changes to the non-union guidelines?
So moved.
Thanks, Al.
Second.
Was that Nilda?
Yep.
Any questions about this? The big red spot at the bottom was the whole appendix about the health change, the healthcare, so. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 9-0. Item 7B, approve the extracurricular and co-curricular guidelines. And it looked to me like there was no changes there except FY21 is the same as FY20.
That's correct, Jeff. That's the only changes. We changed the dates.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the extracurricular and co-curricular guidelines?
So moved.
Second.
Nilda? Second?
Second.
Thanks, Al. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? 9-0. Item 7C, staff leave requests. Is this Angela?
Yes.
This teacher is asking for a year leave of absence, which we would support.
Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the staff leave requests?
So moved.
Thanks, Al.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Any discussion?
I have a question about this,
All right.
Jeff.
Go ahead, Nilda.
So in these uncertain times, are we setting ourselves up as a precedent for this in case we were to receive other requests for leaves of absences along the way? I have no opposition to this particular one. I'm just wondering if we're setting ourselves up or not. And I don't know if those of you that know more about this than I can speak to that.
Bill?
I'm going to say that'd be my exact. That was my question too.
Thanks, Sue. Go ahead, Kevin.
I think Bill wants to speak.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't believe we are, Nilda. I think it's a good question to ask, are we setting ourselves up? You know, we look at each leave as they come, but I actually think in these times, I don't see us having a human resource issue right now. That could differ the type of position that we see, because some positions are harder than others to fill, but we're able to fill positions as of today, because we're doing some hiring even right now as we speak. It's been difficult, but we're able to do it.
Okay, a follow-up question, Bill.
Yeah.
If we were to deny a leave of absence, is that a grievable offense? I can't remember.
I have to, if you want to give me 2 minutes, I'll read this in the master agreement. I don't like quoting things that I'm out in front of me in writing. So
Gotcha.
I'd like to look at that.
Yeah, okay. Just curious.
Yeah. Do you want me to go look right now, or is that something I could just answer later in an email back to you?
Well, I'd like to know before vote on the
Okay,
item.
so I'll go, if you give me 2 minutes, I'll go look and read.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can just do 7D, because I think that one's more straightforward, and then we'll come back. Is that okay for everybody? We'll just, we have a motion on the floor, but.
On the floor, can't do that.
Do you want to withdraw it, Al? Did you say yes?
Okay, I'll withdraw it.
Okay. So now we'll move on to 7D.
Sorry for the complication, folks.
So we have Joan, I believe, extended leave request. You're muted, Joan. Oh.
It's mine.
Oh.
I think that's Shannon, the teacher. That's from SATEC.
Okay.
I would completely support this request.
Okay. Seems straightforward. Can we get a motion to approve the extended leave requests?
I'll make that motion.
Sue, thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jack. Anybody have questions about this one? Okay.
Just wondering if this is typical duration for this kind of leave.
It's a pretty normal request, and we're able to fill it.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Looks like the ayes have it 9-0. And I see Bill still studying the screen.
Give me 1 minute. I'm on this second paragraph of this section.
Okay.
So, Nilda, to give you information, is it grievable? And I think any can be grievable. I think Al's right there. The way he's nodding his head, you know, you can grieve whatever you want to grieve.
Agreed.
The statement that I think that's in here is teachers, the leave of absence for 1 year is at the discretion of the board. The teacher must submit a written request to the board with all details regarding his or her requests. And that they'll be acted in within 1 month. So I think it's more how the word could get grievable if you did them without some sort of common judgment, if I can say that.
Yeah.
You know, that it wasn't sorry, I'm losing my words. I can't pronounce it right now, but it was capricious and I can't say the
arbitrarily.
Arbitrarily and capricious. Thank you. That's this phrase that I'm looking for, the legal phrase. If you did that, I couldn't advise the board to do something like that.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time to look that up. I appreciate it.
Al, can I get you to remake your motion to approve the staff leave requests?
So moved.
Thank you, Al. Steve? Can you second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 9-0. Thank you, everybody. Okay, on to the warrants.
Move that the warrants be approved with the approval being et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, thank you, Al. That passage of this motion will act as individual board member authorization of their signature on these warrants.
Thank you.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jack. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it, 9-0. Item 8B, Superintendent's Report.
Oh, once again, I'm sure you've heard me enough tonight. I just want to add, once again, we're going through some intense times, and where I really want to thank the board is your support, but also just those little emails and those little phone calls, either asking a question or you know, how can I help, and those type of things. They mean probably more than you may think. And I think we all appreciate that when those things happen. Because everybody's going through, I wouldn't say a tough time, maybe, but certainly a time of high reflection and a time of some doing things we're not used to. So thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank everybody.
And I'd like to extend my thanks to everybody that's been working diligently to get ready for school reopening, and especially to Kevin and Brett, for Angela and Joan and John for their leadership.
Okay. Item 8C, board announcements. Do we have any board announcements? Okay, I don't hear anybody. So, agenda items for future meetings. Our next meeting is on September 2nd. So that will be less than a week before school starts. So I believe we'll be getting another report like we got tonight. Now I'd look for a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A1F for a legal update.
So moved.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Joanne. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it.